Hi, welcome to the Amazing Way podcast. I'm Beth Reese, and I'm so excited to be here with my very, very dear friend, Rebecca Connors. Now, Rebecca and I go way back. I think it's been since like 2010 or 11. Rebecca, what do you think?
11.
11, good one. So Rebecca's head of a Montessori school, Sugar Creek Montessori. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yes.
Here in Houston. And Rebecca and I met when we met years ago. It was one of those moments when you think about when you conspire with the universe to make something happen and it happens. Like that's totally what happened. So I was leading the Yogiños Yoga for Youth trainings, and I really wanted to work with a Montessori school. And I wanted to work with someone who was like-minded and would let me come in and do research. And like literally as this training starts, my partner colleague, Meredith Patterson, was like, Beth, have you met Rebecca? She's head of a Montessori school. Like it couldn't have been better timing. So Rebecca joins us today. She has like 30 years of experience working in Montessori schools, about a decade as directress, which is head of a classroom. And then she has spent off and on about 18 years as head of a couple different Montessori schools. And then for 3.5 years, a time when we had a very special relationship, she was my boss lady. She was district manager of a group of Montessori schools here in Houston. So we have been yogis together, friends, like sisters, and my boss. And it's such an honor to have you here, Rebecca. So thank you.
Thank you.
So what I really want to talk about and chat with you about is, because it's such an amazing story. In the podcast, the part of the goal is to talk about how we can bring yoga and mindfulness on and off the mat to students, teachers, families, everyone. And like you're doing it. You've been doing it for a while. And so, Rebecca, I wonder, we were talking before the podcast started, before I started recording, I wonder, and it's such a beautiful, moving story, I wonder if you'd share with us what your journey was to get on the yoga mat. So once upon a time, there wasn't even yoga in your life. And so what was that journey for you?
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Once upon a time, there was no yoga in my life. There was Montessori, which has been the most constant since I had children. And well, since I had my first child, and then it was time to go back to work. And I went, wait, I can't leave her. So, bringing my children and being able to be with my children is what brought me to Montessori to teach. And even going before that, even as a little girl, I knew that when I grew up, I was going to be two things. I was going to be a mommy and a teacher. And that's what I've done. So somebody who I had worked with before said, you need to go to Montessori. You need to go to Montessori. So I go to this Montessori school, walk in, have no idea what's going on, don't even know what Montessori is. And I am a strong person. I have a strong personality, and I can lead a classroom, Montessori or not, and they hired me. Put me in the classroom. Next thing I know, I'm going to teacher training to be a Montessori teacher trainee, Montessori teacher. So that is what got me to Montessori. So Montessori my whole life up until the year 2011 actually is not only when I met you, Beth, but before that is when, just a few months before that, I got introduced to yoga by the universe, I believe. I had just experienced the tragic, not traumatic, but tragic death of my mother. She had spent 3 years battling cancer, and she had passed away in January of 2011. And I was grief-stricken. My mother was, I won't say that she was my best friend, but she was my go-to. She was my person. There wasn't a day that went by that I didn't speak with my mom. So, and just spending the last few weeks, she was actually in my home when she passed away. My brother and I were holding her hand when she took her last breath. And after that, I was empty, and this I think I was on autopilot. The car just drove me back and forth to school. And in my neighborhood, a yoga studio opened, and I kept seeing this sign on the road as I was driving, and the sign said, "Yoga heals, ... pass it on." I saw that sign, and I just kept driving, and then I would see it every single day. And finally, one day, the car drove to the studio, and I was just looking at it, and I got out, and the next thing I know, I'm signing up for a beginner yoga class. Met my first teacher, Carrie Mushaw at Yoga on the Brazos, and joined. And for the first 6 months, I cried in every yoga class because yoga heals. Yoga was bringing out my emotions and helping me to heal. So the more yoga I went to, I was like, I immediately was like, okay, I don't want to just do the beginner. I want to come every day. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And so I'd be very ambitious. Physically, it definitely rearranged my body. I felt so great. Emotionally and mentally and even spiritually, I was like awakening and for the first time really awakening. And that's okay. And I just began to think about this yoga, and I was like, the kids at school could do this. And so I just said to Carrie, I said, I think I just want to teach yoga to these kids at school. I want them to experience this. And the philosophies of yoga are so intertwined with Montessori's principles and methods that it just kept resonating. And so she said, you need to meet Beth Reese. You need to meet Beth Reese. And the next thing I know, I'm signed up for teacher training to become a kids yoga teacher. And so we do that. And I meet Beth and you, Beth, and of course I had a girl crush on you immediately. And I was just sucked in, and I was fascinated. And the people in the class, the other trainees, I resonated with all of them. It was so fantastic to be with these like-minded people, and I could not wait to take this back to school and share it with the children. And what a journey that has been in just bringing this and watching children. And then also practicing the off the mat stuff with them. But that first initial contact with the children was on the mat where I was training, and they were my little group of guinea pigs.
Yeah, totally. And I definitely want to get more into that in a few minutes. So part of what I'm hearing you talk about that, I think a lot of us who have found our way to the yoga mat have had the experience of healing and just the process of maybe things just coming to a space where we can just feel and experience what there is to experience and be with it and start to let it go. I know, and I wonder if you'd be willing to talk a little bit about another way you've experienced yoga helping you heal. And that is with a recent adventure you've been on, or the last 18 months, that started on a very snowy day. Would you be willing to share how kind of yoga off the mat has helped you heal in that?
Yes. So actually it was a year ago, January 17th, we had Martin Luther King Day. So we had a holiday from school, and then we had a snow day on the Tuesday. And then on the Wednesday, we had the next snow day. And so there was no school, and it was very, very, people that live in Houston probably remember that because we're not used to it. So those kinds of things like hurricanes stick in our mind. And I went out in the morning, just like I normally do, to walk my dog. And as we were walking back in, I somehow slipped on ice that was covered on the sidewalk. And when I fell, I slipped where, if you imagine like in a cartoon where you're up and then you're bam on your back, flat on your back. Only unfortunately for me, my left arm went completely behind my back too, which snapped my humerus and shattered my elbow. So there I was. I adrenaline kicked in. I jumped up, looked. My arm was clearly no longer attached to itself. I knew something was wrong. Got to a neighbor. They called 911, went to the hospital, found out how severe the break was, had to go to surgery, had to move in with my sister because I could not take care of myself. And I was in the process anyway of moving from one place to another to be closer to my school. And so literally that day, the rug was pulled out from underneath me. And I felt broken. I felt old. I felt homeless. I had every terrible feeling that you can feel when you go through a trauma like that. I felt like, what the hell? I don't know what's going on. Why is this happening? What did I do wrong? I don't deserve this. And so I had to go through all of those things. And it really took I would say maybe a whole month, which doesn't seem like very long when you look back at it. So I'm grateful for that. That then my yoga kicked in, and then I began to realize the gratitude. And then as soon as I remembered the things to be grateful for, like, hey, I'm breathing, I'm living, I'm walking. I am not an invalid. I am not helpless. I can do things for myself. And I'm a very strong-willed person, and I immediately began to do things for myself.
Shocking.
And it felt so good, like when I put like a jar between my legs and opened it with my right hand. And by the way, I'm a lefty. So bam, double whammy. And I began to, I never stopped my meditations. I never stopped my nighttime meditations. But then for the first month, I'm pretty sure all I did was watch anything on Netflix or Amazon that I could watch. It was completely mindless. And then I was like, I can't do this. It was driving me crazy, and I couldn't go to work. I couldn't drive. It was trauma. And I realize that now. And I suffered from, and still do to a degree, from some PTSD from the fall and just everything that I went through. I really did crash and burn in many ways, emotionally, financially. It really hurt. And what I did was, I turned to yoga off the mat. Physical yoga on a mat wasn't available at that time. But I just began to remember my gratitude and to thank myself for just getting up in the morning and trudging along. And then I also realized that part of probably what the universe was trying to tell me when I took this fall was, hey, you don't have to do everything by yourself. There are other people that can help you, and it's okay for you to accept the help. So for me, accepting and receiving what I like to give out was really challenging. And I am a giver. I love to give. I love to love. I love to shine my light. And what I realize is it's okay for me to receive that back. And so I've spent this past year with a second surgery because it also damaged my ulnar nerve. A third surgery on the horizon to get me more range of motion, to remove the metal plates and screws that are in my arm so I can go to the airport and take a trip. So yeah, am I on the right track here? This is...
Yeah, no. And I'm thinking maybe for someone out there listening, watching, who might be thinking yoga off the mat, like what? And just like a moment to step back and think about in the lineage of like hatha yoga and some other kinds of yoga, there's actually the 8 limbs of yoga. And it's one way to think about yoga. And that poses and breathing, things we often think that are the only parts of yoga, poses and breathing are like one piece or one part of this 8-limb tree, if you will. So it's called the 8 limbs of yoga. So part of what I really hear you saying, and to me, it's been part of my journey as well. Like there was the time when, I wanted to like nail the fancy poses with like my foot behind my head. Yeah, never got there, but like really wanted to take it to that really physical place, and nothing wrong with that. And what I have found over the years, in the last like 15 years, I've been practicing a lot, is really exactly what you're pointing to, Rebecca. It's how we choose to live our life, and to pull in these pieces of taking care of ourselves, taking care of others. I hear this experience in your life, you've learned to start to create a balance in the giving and receiving. And of course, there are those mudras, I take care of you, I receive love from you. But really those opportunities to take that holistic picture of yoga and really live your life, again, amazing choices, in a way that really is a stand for like honoring the universe and how we are all connected. Yes. And I hear like part of this, your whole journey, like really helps support you in this, the last, so it's been like 13 months with this experience with, with your arm. And I get like, you could have chosen to go down some really different paths, right? And maybe there were some moments when that darkness whispered to you.
It did. It did. I like to borrow the phrase from Grey's Anatomy. I was really dark and twisty for a while. And then I also know myself, and I would pull out my journal and begin to write, which is a lot of yoga off the mat right there, because yoga off the mat to me is realizing it, holding the space for it, allowing it to come up, and then letting it go, no matter what. That's a big piece of yoga off the mat for me personally, and my personal life.
Beautiful, beautiful, awesome. Well, let's on that note, let's take a break, and then let's come back, Rebecca, and let's talk more about how you have taken your journey, your yoga journey on and off the mat, and woven it into your professional life as a Montessori head of school.
Great. Okay.
All right.